The title means two lights, twilight, right? Which is the relationship between the two lights of the two instruments, the percussion that tends to become like a double bass, and the double bass that tends to become like a percussion. And there is also the two lights between the world of the acoustic instruments and the world of the electronics. Now, I also have a theory, personal theory, about the twilight sound or Zwielicht Klänge of the instruments. That is, let's take a piano, because many people know the piano. If you hit the piano on the wood, well, you don't hear the piano, you just hear a piece of wood. So you lose the personality and the identity of the instrument. If you play the piano normally, you hear it is a piano. But maybe there are some ways of playing the instrument. There is a world that is very fragile and very delicate around the instrument, where the sounds are not known, but the instrument has not yet lost its identity or its personality. And this is the world of the twilight sounds of the instruments. And I tried with this piece to explore also this world. Of course there was that. The first thing is that I record all the sounds in the electronics are recorded twilight sounds of the instruments that are playing in the piece. So there is a very natural and a very organic relationship between these sounds and the sounds that are being played during the concert. The second point is that sometimes I recorded sounds that were so weak and almost unhearable that I had to do so you can never hear them in the concert, because just 20 centimeters away from the instrument you will not hear them anymore. So I was at the radio at the studio of the electronic music in Cologne. The studio where Stockhausen worked and did all of his pieces from Kontakte, Gesang der Junglinge until now. And then I said, okay, there you have a lot of microphones. So we had to choose a special microphone that could pick up these very weak sounds. And then there were very heavy processing of the sound, because there was a lot of noise, of course, a lot of, well, dirty things in the sound themselves. And they came out very, very incredible, very special sounds that didn't really work. And they become part of expressivity and part of expressive material in the piece. The second point about the space is that because of the world of work of space with Stockhausen, there was in the studio a natural, I would say, setup where one could work with 12 loudspeakers. Of course, Stockhausen liked the number 12 in his own music. And then I said, okay, I will use his 12 loudspeakers, not in the setup that he used, that is in a circle, but in a different geometric setup. There are different polygons that are made of these 12 loudspeakers. And then I add a 13th one, because I just want to do one more than him. And that it will give the sound that's coming from outside the hall. So that you have an idea that the sound is at the same time in the hall, and sometimes it goes outside of the hall, to get an impression of a sound coming from very far. So it could be an installation, in the meaning that you could imagine to get into this sound world that you do not experience normally in the life, but is still very organic and very instrumental. I just let yourself be inside of the instrument. I think that sound is not independent, totally independent from space. Each sound has a space in itself, and it can occupy, or you can be composed into several spaces, but not in all of them. So the first thing that I did a sort of catalog of all the possible spaces that could go naturally, musically, with the different sound materials that I had recorded. There are, I think there are 13 families of sounds, different sounds. And then I said, which kind of space? And the second point, is the space a point, or is the space oscillating between points, or is the space moving? And if it is moving, that is, it is going through different points, is it moving cyclically, or is it doing just one path from one point to another? So I really made quite a detailed catalog of all these possibilities. When I knew what I could do with the different sounds, then I started to compose a form that could go through, so could use some of these sounds in a way that was the most organic and the most natural possible. So you have really the feeling that the electronics, although it is electronic, so it is composed by me, interpreted by me, and then fixed on let's say pre-composed on a tape or on a sound file nowadays, could sound so naturally and so musically that it was as if it's just living with the instrumentalists and just talking to them, dialoguing with them, and sometimes contrasting with them, as if it was a living being. Oh, this is a very big issue for me. Actually, I wrote a music theory article a long time ago when I was in the mid-20s called Musical Information Organisms, which explains more or less my way of composing. I compose with organisms and I compose with sounds. And the organisms not in the meaning of a living being with whom one could fall in love or feel pain for it, but organisms in a way that's the way our brain apprehends the world is organic. It's because we are what our brains and our senses make us to be. We cannot experience the world otherwise than this. And I studied quite a lot what it means to have an approach to the world, especially to the world of music, because this is my way of relating to the world, in a way that our brain and our feelings can communicate to it, can get an input to it, and also be free with it, can interpret it in the way one feels like. And this is a world of organicity. Now, organicity is not something that is necessarily produced by a body, but it's something that a brain could recognize as though it could have been produced or it could be appealed by a human being. And this is a dimension in music that I very much look for, even in instrumental music or also in electronic music. In order to do like this, one has to learn, first of all, how the machines think, because the machines don't think organically, they think in their own way. And actually very often, especially nowadays, they think in the way some people who program them decided that you have to think. So you think you're free with the machine, but actually you're just reproducing schemata and patterns that somebody had programmed into the machine. And I absolutely did not want to do like that. I wanted the machines to think the way I think, and not the way they made me think. So also in the 20s, when I went to MIT, I went there because I thought it was the best place in the world where I could try to understand what is the world of the machine and how I can feel myself free in my own way to tell the machine, think the way I want, and don't let me think the way you want. There is never a predefined form that one has to fill with sound material, because sound material is never completely predictable, and then you have to accept also what the sound is telling you to do. On the other hand, I think what one has to know where to go and what to do before looking for sounds, because the sound world is so rich that unless you know where you want to go, you just get lost in thousands of beautiful sounds that don't have meaning, musical meaning and formal meaning. So it's always, let's say, an interplay between the sound, the world of sound, and the form and the path that you define when you perform. In this piece, I tried to work with two apparently contradictory, let's say, elements. The form of the piece, the time form of the piece, is extremely composed according to the golden ratio. So all the structure of the piece, whatever it is at the low level, the relationship between the notes, or at the high level, the relation between the parts of the piece, they're all structured by this extremely rigorous golden mean. And then I said, how can I make this rigorous time frame, into something living? By choosing the material that can be attached to it in a way that is the most natural and the most organic way. And I had to adapt myself. Sometimes I had to adapt a little bit the form, sometimes I had to adapt a little bit the material. There is also an homage to Stockhausen, because the piece was done just after, in the studio, just after he wrote Octophonie. It's actually an homage to Contacte. In Contacte, the climax of the piece is a big tam solo of tam tam and gong that the two players, the pianist and the percussion player, play in the middle of the hall. In my own thing, there is also a strike of tam tam. There is a tam tam behind the double bass player, which is in the middle of the stage. But it's a pianissimo tam, and actually it's a big tam that invades the hall from the space, and then at the end is played softly by the double bass player. So those who have an idea of what Contacte by Stockhausen was, they will certainly remember that there is this kind of hidden homage to this great master of electronic sounds that was Stockhausen. There is not a theatrical dimension in the meaning that I ask the players to do anything else than playing. There is not any mimics in the player, there is not any strange sounds or strange movements that they are supposed to do. That is, I don't expect the players to be anything else than players, performers, not actors or dancers or whatever it is. There is, however, a very strong visual dimension in the way the stage is set up and the way I think the sounds project into the space, because it's a living space around, an organic space around the audience. So from this point of view, there is a theater, but maybe a theater of sound rather than a theater of gestures. Well, I would like to quote Varese, because I think he gave maybe the best definition of music that I know. That he said music is organized sound. That is, sound is what we hear, is not what we think. But you need to think about what we hear in order to make it interesting and appealing and varied and organic. Sound doesn't come just like this. You really have to control it. So for me, it's extremely important to take into account not the perception, but a polyphony of perceptions by the audience. That is, I don't want the audience to listen to the music just in the way I thought. Actually, I'm very surprised when myself, I listened to something that I did, I said, interesting, I also did this, I didn't realize, because it was just in the music itself. So music is sound, music is sound that goes to an audience, I think, that goes to an audience and creates in the audience some kind of reaction, of whatever it is, some kind of feeling, some kind of emotion, some kind of thoughts. It's not just a concept. You need a concept to do like this because it doesn't come alone, but you have to go outside of the concept into the sound through the players, through the performers who give their own sensibility, their own history and their own personality to the sound. And this is what is beautiful in music. It's not just an idea that you write in a piece of paper and then you put in a drawer and just leave it there forever. It's an idea that becomes gesture, that becomes life, story, history, and then goes to an audience and impinges on their perception and on their brains, on their sensations, and create this kind of unique experience, which is the experience of a concert. I know that nowadays people go much less to concerts because they hear concerts on YouTube. But I think that's a pity. It's great to have YouTube, to have some information, but there is nothing that can replace the experience and also the social experience of being in a concert. It's also a bionivocal correspondence. There is not one that has to adapt to the other or the other to the one. I think both have to adapt themselves. It's true that the romantic 19th century idea of a concert is a bit obsolete nowadays. There is no doubt about it. On the other hand, one should not throw away the concert completely, because there are also very good points about the concert. The sound quality, the performance quality, the social event of being in a place, in a hall that sounds pretty well. I prefer a concert hall than a stadium, I must say, to have to hear music with a certain care and a certain quality. So one should not throw everything away, but one should definitely try to find, anyway one is obliged to, other ways of keeping the good points of the concerts and maybe adapting themselves or making them evolve to the good points of the progress of the society in terms of technology and in terms of social experiences. It's a difficult challenge, it's a great challenge, but we need ideas to get it. Yes, I very much miss the lack of communication between other forms of art, with the different forms of art. Visual artists make his own things, very often with very bad music. Composers write pieces, or performers write in a concert, very often with a very poor visual aspect, and they don't communicate with each other. I think there is a great potential. I'm a bit more skeptical about a very great tendency nowadays, very much used, which is have the audience participate to the art, to the thing. I think this, from the point of view of entertainment or from a social or an educational point of view, it's great, it's very interesting. But I mean, a performer is a person who has dedicated his or her own life to playing and mastering an instrument. How can an audience, by just like pushing a button or moving a fader or moving the hand, interact at this level? So I think this level of interaction is great from for a pedagogical point of view, or just to have fun, but cannot be compared with the dedication that a performer and that a composer or an artist put in creating a work that is worth being heard or being listened to or being looked at. I think we met each other. I wanted to write a piece for percussion instrument that looks like a string instrument that is bowed, so a percussion that becomes in the direction of the string, and I wanted to have a string instrument that becomes like a percussion. I think that the best instrument for this is a double bass, because there is a great potential of development in the instrument itself. It's much more than many of the other string instruments. There is a lot to do with the double bass, and also because as a percussion instrument is, of course, a double bass sounds wider, larger than a violin, just because of the size of the instrument. And then I was looking for this, and then I met Skodanibio, and I said, but this double bass player has a great potential because he's already searching for his own playing and his own music in this direction. So I think we met each other. I had the need of that, and he maybe was already doing some of the things that I was looking for. We did a lot of sessions. We showed, we looked for sounds together, and the result of the piece is a cooperation between him and me, and so that it works the way it came out. So I think it's a bionivocal again relationship. He found me, I found him, we found each other, and we agreed to go through a common path for some time to get out of this piece.